HOA Karen filled my pool with concrete without my permission. You won't believe what happened next. It's a warm summer morning in suburban America. The sun's rays gently filter through your bedroom curtains, stirring you from sleep. You stretch, yawn, and decide to start your day with a refreshing dip in your backyard pool. You slide open the patio door, step outside, and your heart stops. Where your sparkling blue oasis once stood, there's now a solid gray slab of concrete. Your pool, your pride and joy, has vanished overnight, replaced by an ugly, lifeless mass. This isn't a nightmare. This isn't a movie plot. This is my reality. My name is Michael Thompson, and this is the true story of how my neighbor, a woman I'll call Karen, took it upon herself to destroy my property in an act of unimaginable entitlement and cruelty. You might be thinking, that's impossible. No one would do that. I thought the same thing. But as I stood there, staring at the concrete monstrosity in my backyard, I realized that the impossible had become possible. The unthinkable had become real. In the next 2 hours, I'm going to take you on a journey through the events that led to this shocking act of vandalism. We'll explore the escalating tensions in our once peaceful neighborhood, the warning signs I missed, and the aftermath of this life-altering incident. This isn't just a story about a ruined pool. It's a cautionary tale about property rights, the dangers of unchecked entitlement, and the importance of standing up for yourself in the face of injustice. It's about the thin line between civility and chaos in suburban America, and how quickly that line can be crossed. But most importantly, it's a story about resilience, about fighting back when you've been wronged, and about the power of community and the law to right even the most egregious wrongs. So, buckle up. This story has twists and turns you won't see coming. It has moments that will make you angry, moments that will make you laugh in disbelief, and hopefully, moments that will inspire you. This is my story. The story of how my HOA Karen filled my pool with concrete without my permission and what happened next. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comment section, and don't forget to like, comment, and hit the subscribe button for more of these gripping stories. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Michael Thompson, a 34-year-old software engineer living in Maple Grove, a quiet suburban community just outside of Minneapolis. I've called this place home for the past 5 years, drawn by its peaceful atmosphere and tight-knit community feel. My house isn't extravagant, but it's mine, and I take pride in it, especially the backyard pool I had installed 3 years ago. Maple Grove is your typical American suburb: manicured lawns, white picket fences, and an active homeowners association, HOA, that ensures everything stays picture perfect. I've always been a stickler for rules, making sure my property adheres to HOA guidelines. Little did I know that my commitment to being a model neighbor would soon be put to the ultimate test. It all started in the summer of 2023 when Karen Mitchell moved in next door. At first, she seemed like a dream neighbor: friendly, outgoing, always ready with a wave and a smile. She was in her mid-40s, recently divorced, and eager to make a fresh start in our community. I remember thinking how lucky we were to have such a pleasant addition to the neighborhood. But as the saying goes, appearances can be deceiving. Over time, Karen's true colors began to show, and they weren't pretty. It started small: comments about my lawn care routine, suggestions about my choice of outdoor furniture. I brushed these off as harmless neighborly advice. In retrospect, I should have seen these as the first red flags. Things took a turn for the worse when Karen discovered my pool. One day, I came home from work to find her and a group of friends lounging by my pool, music blaring, empty wine bottles scattered around. When I confronted her, she acted surprised, claiming she thought it was a community pool since she could see it from her property. I explained, as politely as I could, that this was my private pool and not for public use. Karen apologized profusely, seeming genuinely embarrassed. I, wanting to maintain good relations, let it slide. This, I now realize, was my second mistake. From that point on, Karen's behavior became increasingly entitled. She would pop over for impromptu swims, often bringing guests. She began to act as if my pool was an extension of her property. I tried to set boundaries, but Karen always had an excuse or a sob story. She was lonely, she was going through a hard time, the community pool was too crowded. The situation reached a boiling point in early June 2024. I returned from a business trip to find my backyard in disarray, wet towels strewn about, empty beer cans floating in the pool, and a broken pool chair. It was clear Karen had thrown a party in my absence. When I confronted her this time, Karen's demeanor changed completely. Gone was the apologetic neighbor. In her place stood a woman who believed she was entitled to use my property as she saw fit. She argued that since her property taxes were just as high as mine, she had a right to enjoy community amenities. The next day, I found a handwritten note in my mailbox. It was a list of pool rules Karen had drafted, including designated hours for her use, guidelines for guests, and even suggestions for pool maintenance. I was stunned. This woman was actually trying to dictate how I should use my own property. As I stood there, reading and rereading this outrageous list, I couldn't help but wonder, how would you react if your neighbor tried to impose rules on your private property? Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would culminate in the destruction of my beloved pool. But before we get to that shocking event, let's take a closer look at how the situation continued to escalate. The morning of July 15, 2024, is forever etched in my memory. I woke up early, planning to start my day with a refreshing swim. As I stepped onto my back patio, rubbing sleep from my eyes, I froze. Where my pool should have been, there was now a solid gray slab of concrete. I blinked hard, convinced I was still dreaming. But the harsh reality remained unchanged. My mind raced as I approached the concrete monstrosity. The smell of fresh cement hung in the air. I touched the surface, it was still slightly damp. This had happened recently, probably overnight. Disbelief gave way to anger, then to a sickening realization, this was no accident. Someone had deliberately destroyed my property. In a daze, I retreated inside and called the police. While waiting for them to arrive, I checked my security camera footage. To my horror, the cameras had been disabled. This was premeditated, carefully planned. I spoke with my immediate neighbors, hoping someone had seen or heard something. Most were as shocked as I was, offering sympathy and outrage on my behalf. Then I knocked on Karen's door. She answered with a smug smile that made my blood boil. "Good morning, Michael." "Is something wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. I could barely contain my fury. "Karen, what have you done to my pool?" Her response left me speechless. "Oh, that old thing? I did you a favor. Pools are such a liability, you know. Now you don't have to worry about it anymore." I was stunned. "A favor? You destroyed my property. This is vandalism, it's illegal." Karen's demeanor changed instantly. She became defensive, her voice rising. "You were selfish, Michael. A pool should be for everyone. If you couldn't share, then no one should have it." Our argument escalated quickly. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Karen, realizing she had an audience, changed tactics. She began to cry, claiming I had been harassing her for months, denying her access to the community pool. She painted herself as the victim, and to my astonishment, some neighbors seemed to believe her. In the days that followed, the situation spiraled out of control. Karen took to social media, spreading her false narrative. She claimed I had violated HOA rules by installing the pool without proper permits, a blatant lie. She even suggested I had filled in the pool myself to frame her. Our once peaceful neighborhood became a battleground of whispers and pointed fingers. Some neighbors rallied around me, outraged by the destruction of private property. Others, swayed by Karen's tears and tales of victimhood, began to view me with suspicion. The community became sharply divided. HOA meetings turned into shouting matches. Neighbors who had been friends for years now avoided each other. The sense of trust and camaraderie that had drawn me to Maple Grove was shattered, replaced by an atmosphere of tension and mistrust. As I watched my community tear itself apart over Karen's actions, I couldn't help but wonder, have you ever experienced a neighbor dispute that got out of hand? How did you handle it? The destruction of my pool was bad enough, but seeing my neighborhood descend into chaos was heartbreaking. I knew I had to take action, not just for myself, but for the sake of our entire community. Little did I know, the path to justice would be far from smooth. As the situation spiraled out of control, I knew I needed professional help. I reached out to my old college friend, Sarah, who had become a property lawyer. After hearing my story, she was appalled and immediately offered her assistance. Sarah laid out my legal options. We could pursue a civil lawsuit against Karen for property damage, trespassing, and potentially emotional distress. She emphasized the importance of gathering solid evidence to build a strong case. We began meticulously documenting everything. I provided Sarah with all the photographs I had taken of the concrete-filled pool, along with a detailed timeline of Karen's escalating behavior over the past year. We collected statements from neighbors who had witnessed Karen's unauthorized pool use and her confrontational behavior. Sarah also advised me to obtain repair estimates for removing the concrete and restoring the pool. These estimates would be crucial in determining the extent of damages we'd claim in the lawsuit. With our evidence compiled, Sarah filed a lawsuit against Karen for property damage and trespassing. The complaint detailed Karen's pattern of behavior, the destruction of my pool, and the financial and emotional toll it had taken on me and the community. When Karen was served with the lawsuit, her reaction was a mix of shock and indignation. She initially tried to maintain her innocence, claiming she had acted in the best interest of the community. However, as the legal process unfolded and she faced the mountain of evidence against her, Karen's bravado began to crumble. During mediation, Karen's lawyer advised her of the severity of her actions and the potential consequences. Faced with the reality of her situation, Karen finally showed remorse. She admitted to filling my pool with concrete in a misguided attempt to solve what she perceived as a community problem. The resolution came swiftly after that. The court ordered Karen to pay for the complete restoration of my pool, including the removal of the concrete and any necessary repairs. Additionally, she was required to cover my legal fees and pay damages for the emotional distress caused. As part of the settlement, Karen agreed to sell her house and move out of the neighborhood. The HOA implemented new rules to prevent similar incidents in the future, including clearer guidelines on property boundaries and dispute resolution procedures. The concrete was removed, my pool was restored, and slowly, our community began to heal from the ordeal. While the experience was undoubtedly traumatic, it ultimately brought many of us closer together, reinforcing the importance of respecting each other's property and resolving conflicts through proper channels. As I reflect on this experience, I can't help but wonder, do you think legal action was the right approach in this situation? Why or why not? In the end, this ordeal taught us all valuable lessons about property rights, community responsibility, and the power of standing up for what's right. While the path to justice wasn't easy, it was necessary to restore not just my property, but the peace in our neighborhood. As I sit here today, reflecting on the whirlwind of events that unfolded over the past year, I realize how profoundly this experience has changed my perspective on community living and property rights. What began as a simple dispute over a pool escalated into a battle for justice that tested my resolve and reshaped my understanding of neighborly relations. I learned that while community living can foster camaraderie and support, it can also expose vulnerabilities. People can sometimes act out of self-interest, leading to conflicts that can turn neighbors into adversaries. My ordeal with Karen was a stark reminder that boundaries matter. It's essential to establish clear lines regarding what is acceptable and what is not, especially when it comes to personal property. This experience also highlighted the importance of documentation. From the moment I noticed Karen's unauthorized use of my pool, I should have been more diligent in keeping records. Photos, notes of conversations, and witness statements became invaluable tools in building my case. Knowing your legal rights as a homeowner is crucial. It empowers you to take action when faced with injustice. I urge everyone watching to educate themselves about their property rights and HOA regulations. Familiarize yourself with the rules that govern your community, understand your rights as a homeowner, and don't hesitate to seek legal advice if you find yourself in a similar situation. Knowledge is power, and being informed can help prevent disputes from escalating into serious conflicts. In closing, I want to emphasize the importance of standing up for oneself while also striving for community harmony. It's easy to get caught up in anger and resentment during disputes, but ultimately, we must remember that we share our neighborhoods with others. Finding common ground and resolving conflicts amicably should always be the goal. Thank you for joining me on this journey through my story. If you've ever faced a similar situation or have thoughts on community living, I encourage you to share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories matter. They can inspire others who may find themselves in challenging circumstances. Remember to like this video if you found it engaging, subscribe for more gripping stories like mine, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, we can foster a community of awareness and support.